Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's SIIA Tech Chat. I'm Rihanna Collier, and I'm joined today by Brian Bell, Chief Marketing Officer at Ping Identity. Ping is a provider of identity and access management solutions. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, absolutely. Great to be here.
So I want to jump right in. The identity management space is, I think we can say, on fire from an acquisition standpoint. Companies have generated, I think, over $6 billion in acquisitions last year from both strategic and private equity buyers, which of course includes Ping and the acquisition made by Vista Equity. Why is identity management so attractive to acquirers right now?
Yeah, it is a really dynamic market for sure, and a fast-growing market. I think enterprises have just recognized the value of identity and access management, in the kind of the new world we live in. I think it's really driven by a few things. Well, one is the realization or the fact that the world has just changed so dramatically, right? We kind of live on these things increasingly. Everything is sitting in the cloud, as we all know, and everything is connected. Not just these devices, but all the things around us in our work environment and at home, and yet we need access to data and to applications to be productive, right? In our personal lives, we want access to all the apps that sit here or the apps that reside on our desktops or iPads, and our work environment, we need access to multiple applications that sit in the cloud. And so we want this borderless world where we can seamlessly get access to the things we need, but we're not willing to compromise the security. And certainly the enterprises that we work for aren't willing to sort of, risk having any breaches. And so there's a real need for this secure, seamless access on any device, anywhere, at any time. And you can't really do that with the old paradigms of security. You really need to use modern identity and access management to deliver that user experience that's seamless and frictionless, but yet secure. That's what identity and access management does.
So let's talk about that a little bit further. You mentioned how our world is drastically changing.
Mm-hmm.
How has security changed with all of these innovations, the security space as a whole? And what's the difference between the typical workforce or customer identity management?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So old security, if you will, is still, very relevant. I mean, this idea of just securing and reducing risk throughout the enterprise. There's always going to be a variety of technologies that are important to doing that. But the way we think about security has changed, right? The traditional way of viewing security is that you needed to keep the bad guys out by building sort of physical borders or virtual borders and firewalls to keep those bad guys out. And in a borderless world where we want to be able to walk outside our office and log in from a Starbucks or log in from an airplane, you need to rethink what those boundaries look like, and to manage security in a world where you don't, have those, or it doesn't appear as if you have those boundaries. And that's where identity comes in. We use the phrase that identity is the new perimeter, meaning by leveraging your identity and using policy to control access, you can have very, very secure environments where you're only allowing just the right people in to access the right applications at the right time, sort of just enough access and just-in-time access. That's sort of the new world of security. Your other question, I think, was around customer and workforce identity, and this is also very relevant. Just to explain what that means, customer identity would be you as a consumer of a service. You're the consumer of a bank. You use banking services, or you need to get access to buy a ticket or log into your airline account. Those are consumer identities. And in customer or consumer identity, from an enterprise perspective, it's really about revenue growth. It's about building strong customer engagement. Whereas workforce identity is really about productivity of the workforce. Enterprises want to make sure that their employees are productive and that they're, secure with how they access the information, but they're doing it in a very seamless and frictionless way so that they remain very productive. And so sort of the value of employee identity and customer identity are a little bit different. One is more around productivity with employee, and the other customer identity is more around customer engagement, customer experience, and often revenue generation and loyalty. And the way you approach identity is similar in many ways, but there are some differences. In the world of customer identity, the customer wants control. The customer wants permissions to control data. They want governance over that data. They want to have self-service so that they can say, okay, I want this vendor to have access to that part of my identity, but maybe not this information. Or I want to control how I want to interact or authenticate into these services. Whereas employee identity, typically, those sorts of requirements are determined by the enterprise. So that's sort of the difference between those two types of solutions.
So then, I guess it's easy to say that it's critical to look at them differently when you're looking
Mm-hmm.
to choose an identity management solution such as Ping, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Ultimately, the one thing that is going on, which is true in any of these use cases of identity, whether it's business partners or customers or employees, is moving to a world where it truly is seamless, where you feel secure, but yet you're not having to necessarily interact and authenticate all the time. We talk about a world where there's no passwords anymore, that based on your understanding of who the user is and how they might interact with the various systems, based on where they are, based on biometrics, there's a variety of ways you might be able to prove your identity in a continuous way, and get rid of the world of passwords, which is often viewed by many users as just, cumbersome and, difficult way to authenticate and get access to things you need.
Brian, thank you so much for your time and insights today. For more information on Ping Identity and SIIA, please visit our websites and stay tuned for next week's Tech Chat.